Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR here bringing another awesome movie review. This time I'm giving you my thoughts on the newest interpretation of the epic classic tale of Ben-Hur. This movie stars Jack Hudson, Toby Kebbell, and Morgan Freeman, and is given to us from the director of Wanted, because I've given up trying to pronounce this director's name. Now, this story really follows the tale of these two characters of Judah Ben-Hur and Marcella, and they are raised as brothers. And at one point, Marcelo decides that he wants to leave and join the Roman army just to kind of build a life of his own. And when he comes back, an incident happens which kind of forces one of them to have to do something that they don't want to do. And this then ends up putting Judah Ben-Hur in slavery. And after being a slave for 5 years and then coming back, he decides he wants to take revenge on Marcella and thinks that by beating him in a chariot race, he will get his revenge. Now, this is coming from someone who has never actually seen the 1950s classic. This was really my first exposure to the story of Ben-Hur, even though I had been somewhat familiar with it from people who I've spoken to about it. Now, I can say this. Going into it, I didn't really know what to expect, but I ended up actually leaving the theater actually quite entertained and actually enjoyed the film in a whole. Now, this movie is by no means perfect, but in my opinion, I think it gets a lot of things right. The one thing that absolutely worked from beginning to end for me was the dynamic and the chemistry between the two main characters of Judah Ben-Hur and Marcella. I absolutely bought that these two guys were brothers. I love that type of dynamic between two characters in any type of movies. And, you know, I'm a big brother fan myself, so if you can get that dynamic working, then you pretty much have me invested beginning to end. Another thing that I really thought was very well handled is the production quality. This movie looks phenomenal. It's really one of the best films in terms of quality that I have seen this film, although I did find that there were maybe a couple of issues with the camera with it not being able to hold still. I thought the action scenes were very well handled, especially this one Navy battle scene, which it's done from a very interesting perspective than you would expect. And you really get this sense of atmosphere and dread for these characters who are rowing this boat. And the chariot scene at the end is really epic and phenomenal. It's probably one of the best action scenes I've seen all year. And I really thought the overall performances from the rest of the cast were very well handled. So, in that sense, there really was a lot of good that I got from this film. Now, the problems with this movie are very scattered but somewhat significant. The biggest problem in terms of the casting was Morgan Freeman, because not only does he look ridiculous, but he's clearly phoning it in just for the paycheck. And I find it very ironic that in terms of actual acting talent, Morgan Freeman is the best actor in this film, yet he is giving the least amount of shit, and everybody around him is really taking this material seriously. Another element that I also really didn't like was the ending. Now, I've heard a lot of people complain about the ending, and after really giving it a good amount of thought to think about it, I have to agree that there was a number of choices that I think really hurt the overall presentation of the story that they were trying to tell. Because you got the feeling that it was going to lead up to something that would have had a much more permanent consequence, and it just ended up giving this really typical anticlimactic Hollywood ending. And they even felt the need to add in a really odd song, which really just kind of took me out of the movie entirely. And another major issue that I have with this film is that it really has a hard time, I think, putting enough time into developing and leading up to the final moment. I really wish that, as crazy as I might admit it, I really wish that they would have added maybe a good 20 minutes just to give a little bit more detail, because there were several moments where it was jumping between different story arcs that I thought were just not very significant to what was actually the main story and focus of this film. And every time it did that, it really just was kind of distracting. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this film. Just judging it on its own, if I had to give this interpretation of Ben-Hur a rating, I'm going to give it a B-. I know this movie was getting really bashed by the critics, and it's not doing very, very well in the box office, and it's probably going to end up bombing. But this is actually something I wouldn't mind owning, and after coming out of this film, I can honestly say that this movie will absolutely make it on my top 10 best films of 2016's list when I end up doing it at the end of the year. I enjoyed it that much. But if you've seen this movie, Ben-Hur, share your thoughts with me and everybody in the comments down below. And if you like this movie review, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to track me my future movie reviews. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.